Good morning and welcome back. It's a cold day in San Francisco, so I'm sufficiently dressed even though I'm sitting inside. Um, the last time we uh, uh, discussed financial modeling, we had finished this operating model step 0, and we were just beginning to talk about the capital expenditure and depreciation schedule. So here I have split out the gross book value and the accumulated depreciation. I think I want to highlight that typically when you see the property, plant, and equipment line item in a balance sheet, it is reported as net book value. In this case, net book value would be if you were to sum up property, plant, and equipment, other non-current assets, and subtract from it the accumulated depreciation, that would give you the net book value. So in order to populate this, I'd like to again just remain focused on helping you build your skills to write keyboard shortcuts effectively. So the first thing is we want to just forecast the property, plant, and equipment based on a capital expenditure forecast that I've already given you. So you'll go to cell I11, press the equals to key, the back arrow key plus, and then use the down arrow key to get to cell I14. You will hit enter, and now you will simply be able to select this box, and if you do Control R and Control D, all the cells are going to get populated correctly. Because remember, now you have not anchored any of the cells because you did not need anchoring. You wanted adjacent cells to move right and down as you moved this right and down. And again, just for more keyboard practice, you want to now center align these numbers. So how would you do it? You would do Alt H A C, right? So remember I said earlier, the Alt key is it should become your best friend, and no matter what happens, resist the temptation to use the mouse. So when you press the Alt key, you will see all these letters lighting up. Press the H key, and then you will see that for center selection, this AC is what allows you to center selection. And try to use the keyboard as much as possible. Now, you cannot forecast accumulated depreciation as yet because we haven't built the depreciation forecast. To build the depreciation forecast, we first need to populate this capex table, and since we're using straight line depreciation, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the capital expenditure only starts depreciating in the year in which the capital expenditure occurred. I mean, this part should be obvious. But here I also want to teach you an important technique, and that is called transposing. So we want to take these numbers of capital expenditures and we want to transpose them here. Now there are two ways of transposing. One is one is generally how people transpose, and it goes something like this. You copy a set of columns, and then you go to a set of rows where you want the numbers transposed. You go to paste special by typing Alt ES, and then you press E for transpose. This is an okay way of doing it, but this is not linking your column here with the row here. There's a way to link the column, and that's what I want to show you next. So the way to transpose and still keep the rows linked to a column, select the rows where you want a set of columns transposed to, press the equals to key, type in transpose, open square bracket, select the columns that you want transposed, and now this next part is really important. Press Control Shift Enter, and you're going to see in the formula bar that these square brackets have emerged. That's implying that this is now a transpose. And here, because this is now a link within the same spreadsheet, Excel best practices would say we don't want this to be colored blue, we want this to be colored black. So to change it to black, again, you will use the following keyboard shortcuts. You will press Alt H FC and you chose the black color. So again, Alt H FC and the black color. And as you start building practice, as these shortcuts start becoming second nature to you, this is going to go very, very quickly, which is basically the kind of speed you want to build your experience set up to. For example, this financial model that you see, this should take you no more than 45 minutes. And that's generally where you want to get to, that within 45 minutes to an hour, you can prepare a financial model. And I can assure you that is very much doable. Most folks who've taken this course before or who work closely with me, they get to develop speeds like that within 6 to 8 months of practice. So believe me when I say that, you know, cranking out a model within an hour is absolutely doable. Okay, so now we want to write the accelerated depreciation formula. And the way we want to write it is, we want the depreciation in 2009 to begin in 2009. So so we would take this capex and we would divide it by 23 years. But we want to ensure that that this capex is, as we copy this to the right, the cells G25 and H25 do not move. So where would you put the dollar sign? Before the number or the letter? It'll take you a moment, give you a moment to figure that out. If you selected the column, you've got the answer right. And why anchoring is now so powerful? See, when you copy this right, your ability to copy right and copy down is that much easier. And again, this capex of 45,742 is happening in 2010, which is why the depreciation starts in 2010, and same thing for 2011. But you can see that just getting cell anchoring done correctly allows us to populate a figure so quickly. And you know, in the next part of the exercise, I want you to reduce the keystrokes even further. I want you to do a transpose of depreciation on rows 35 to 38 for the columns I15 to L15, and simply copy this box down, and you'll see that if you've done anchoring correctly, all of that is going to happen really quickly. So let's go through it. And as one word of caution with transpose, whenever you transpose, you must pre-select the number of rows where you want the transpose to happen. So equals to transpose equals to transpose, open square bracket. Yep. And now if you were to, voila. Yeah. And now you can calculate this depreciation on existing plus new capex plus existing plus new capex, and copy this to the right, Alt H AC for center selection, and now you have your accumulated depreciation calculated, so you can forecast accumulated depreciation, which again, to use the keyboard shortcuts, you will hit equals to the back arrow key minus the down arrow key, select the depreciation expense, Control R, and to do center across selection, Alt H AC. And so I hope this gives you a sense of the speed that you can acquire as you start building out financial models when you have mastered keyboard shortcuts. And you know, just to really drive home this point further, if I were to delete everything that I have that I had done, I just want to give you a sense of, and granted, I know the steps that I'm doing beforehand, but I just want to give you a sense of how quickly you can model when you know what you're trying to do. That took a minute, and that's kind of where you want to get to. That populating a schedule like this takes you no more than a minute. So now that we have calculated the forecasted depreciation, now you can go back to forecasting this maintenance expense, which we had calculated as or had assumed historically as 1.7% of property, plant, and equipment. So if you were to now calculate the maintenance expense, you would do 1.7% multiplied by the gross property, plant, and equipment number. And since now this is part calculation, part link, I will still treat it as a link and color coded green. Copy this thing to the right. And now that I have populated my maintenance expense, I can also populate my other operating costs, which I would do it as by summing up all of these operating costs multiplied by 4.9%, which is the way I had taken an assumption on other operating costs was I had said that they are generally a percentage of all of the other operating costs. Not a great assumption to take, but just took it because sometimes you take very loosely defined assumptions, because and this part is really important in putting a model together. Don't get hung up on the assumptions when you are first trying to get the engine together. Get the engine together, see the picture that you want to study, and then you'll figure out whether a particular assumption is really fussing over or not. Now that you're down to EBITDA, you can actually get down to EBIT because you've already forecasted your depreciation expense that you will get from your CapEx and D&A schedule. And since this is a link, you will color code it green, copy it to the right, and you're down to EBIT. So going back to your modeling framework, now that you are down to EBIT, you can get down to debt and interest. You now need to go down to EBT, and for you to do that, you need to forecast the debt and interest schedule, which is the next exercise that we're going to do.